Greetings, guests. Welcome to Celebrating Abilities Virtual Family Forum. Before we begin tonight's presentation, we will have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience. If you need Spanish interpretation and/or closed captioning, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen for the Spanish language and closed captioning.
Buenas noches a todas las familias y gracias por participar aquí en esta junta. Por favor, tengan presente de que para poder escuchar esta junta en español, ustedes pueden mirar que dentro de poco van a ver un globo, el icono de un globo en la parte baja de la pantalla, donde ustedes pueden cliquear y pueden seleccionar español. Lo repito. Para poder escuchar esta junta en español, por favor, véase dentro de poco que va a aparecer un icono de un globo en la parte baja de la pantalla. Usted haga clic en ese icono del globo y seleccione español para poder escuchar esta junta en español. Muchas gracias.
Again, if you need Spanish interpretation and/or closed captioning, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen for the Spanish language. Good evening, MPS, parents and families. Welcome to our 5th annual Celebrating Abilities Special Education Family Forum. While this is our 5th year presenting Celebrating Abilities, it is our first year hosting a virtual event. I am Sherry Silla, and I will serve as the host for the virtual session tonight. We are so grateful that you have joined us. We have come together tonight because we know how important your child's education is to you. Celebrating Abilities is about ensuring that all of our Milwaukee Public School students with special educational needs will have access to the resources they need. Tonight is our second night of a week-long event. Each night we will have a presentation focused on valuable special education resources that are available in our district and community to our families. We look forward to you joining us every night to learn about topics as well as various organizations and services that they offer that can be useful to help your child. Here are the topics for each night. Last night, the topic was learn how platform troubleshooting and assistive technology can support virtual learning. Tonight, Tuesday, March 9th, we'll review what an Individualized Education Program, IEP, means and how it structures education and academic services. Wednesday night, March 10th, we'll discuss ways to cope with stress and discover strategies to empower families to create a positive learning environment. On Thursday, March 11th, you can get information on the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver Program and its benefits. And finally, Friday, March 12th. This is our final night of the week, and we're going to celebrate special education success and more. Once again, we thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope you will join us every night this week. We know that you may have questions as you watch the presentations. Please place those questions in the chat because we will have some time to answer questions after the presentation. Please know that if your question is not answered during the session tonight, we will be compiling the questions from the chat, and you will find the answers to your questions on an MPS Family Engagement webpage at mpsmke.com/family forum. At that same website, a recording of each session will also be available. So sit back, listen, and be ready to engage in our chat feature. As we move towards tonight's main presentation, we want you to know that all of our work in Milwaukee Public Schools revolves around our 5 priorities for success. With that in mind, our focus in planning for the Celebrating Abilities event this week was centered around these areas: increasing academic achievement and accountability, improving district and school culture, and strengthening our community communication and collaboration. We appreciate you and applaud you for all that you do as parents, guardians, and caretakers in partnership with our district to help our students be successful. A couple of reminders. Again, interpretation services can be accessed by clicking on the globe at the bottom of your screen. Number 2, be sure to add questions for the presenters in the chat. And finally, be sure to stick around after tonight's presentation for important messages. Now for our presentation, our presenters tonight are Amy Kowalski from Milwaukee Public Schools. She's the Special Education Director. And also yours truly, Sherry Silla from CISA 1. Our topic tonight is IEP Foundations, College and Career Ready. So with that, we're going to move into the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. You should see the presentation on your screen now. The first slide is, of course, the title of our presentation, College and Career Ready IEPs, also called CCR-IEPs. These are the 5 priorities for success for MPS. 2 of these are of particular note tonight: increasing academic achievement and accountability. This is critical for students with disabilities because CCR-IEP development and the implementation of a CCR-IEP is the cornerstone for improving outcomes for students with disabilities. I also want to point out strengthening communication and collaboration. IEP development and implementation requires a team approach, an IEP team approach. In order for a team to be effective in its work, there must be clear and consistent communication between all team members.
So our objectives for tonight's session include, number 1, we'll familiarize everyone with the 5 beliefs. Number 2, we'll define the 5-step process when we're developing college and career IEPs. And number 3, we'll talk about preparing for the IEP meeting. For Wisconsin, we have reading drives achievement as one of our focuses in regard to IEPs. Reading drives achievement means there's a balance between results and compliance. In the state of Wisconsin, we have repurposed RDA to mean reading drives achievement, success through literacy. You also see the College and Career Ready CCR-IEP. That stands for College and Career Ready IEPs. CCR-IEPs are for all students in public school programs ages 3 through 21 who receive special education services. Thus, CCR-IEPs are not intended only for high school students. Rather, CCR-IEPs build knowledge, skills, and habits throughout a student's academic experiences so that when they graduate, they are college, community, and career ready. An Individualized Education Program, IEP, is developed to meet the unique disability-related needs of the student and help ensure the student graduates ready for further education and the workforce. What I'd like to do right now is share one video that's linked in here called the College and Career Ready video. Whoops. Let's go back to that. There we go.
Every year, families and educators of students with disabilities, students like Liam, get together to plan Individualized Education Programs, or IEPs, in order to help each student succeed in school, and later in college, career, and life in the community. We recommend a 5-step process for developing a college and career-ready IEP. The first step is to make sure everyone understands how the student is doing, academically and otherwise. Liam's IEP team gathers data, information about his academic and functional skills compared to the standards and expectations for all students in his grade. They note his strengths and his passions. This is great information that will help the team later plan services that support Liam's goals. Based on the information shared, the team is concerned Liam is not meeting all the grade level standards when it comes to reading. So what's next? A rich, open discussion to discover Liam's disability-related needs. The second step in developing a college and career-ready IEP is asking how Liam's disability affects his access to instruction, engagement, and progress in school, and why he is not achieving some of the grade level standards in reading. The team begins by sharing what they've observed. Liam's teacher has noticed during small group instruction that Liam has difficulty answering questions after reading grade level text. Liam's dad is concerned because he sees Liam losing confidence in his ability to read, and Liam agrees that's true. Now the team digs deep into why Liam is struggling in reading. They want to identify the root causes of his challenges. His teacher has observed Liam struggles to identify key ideas and details in what he reads. Maybe that makes him frustrated, so he goes off task. But why does he have this difficulty? The reading specialist has worked with Liam. She says he's mastered many foundational reading skills, but on the skill of decoding, like sounding out words, he is more than a year behind the benchmark for his grade. It's hard to read fluently and understand the ideas in a text if you're having to stop to sound out too many words. Could this decoding challenge be the root cause of Liam's reading struggles and his off-task behavior? The IEP team agrees that it is. So now they can move on to step 3, addressing Liam's disability-related needs and supporting his unique strengths by developing ambitious yet achievable goals. They develop a goal for him to increase competency in decoding words, and a goal to read text accurately, quickly, and with expression. Achieving these goals will help Liam identify the main idea and supporting details in grade-level materials, help him have greater confidence while reading, and reduce his off-task behaviors, all of which are ultimately goals for Liam. With the goals set, it's time for step 4, aligning special education services to support Liam with his goals. Everybody on the team discusses how they might contribute. Liam's teacher knows just the book that will engage him while he learns to decode more words. Because the general education reading instruction alone has not been successful in meeting Liam's needs, the IEP team determines that he also needs some specially designed instruction in reading. The reading specialist and the special education teacher will work together to figure out the best strategies to help Liam decode words. While Liam is working to increase his decoding and fluency skills, all his teachers will make sure he gets certain accommodations in the general education classroom, where he can continue to engage with his peers, accessing the same rich content and curriculum that they are, and engaging in the same thinking strategies. Some accommodations in Liam's IEP will even be made available to the whole class, such as text-to-speech on student laptops. Liam is excited about this plan. The team writes down today's discussion in his IEP so everyone knows the plan. They adjourn for the day, but Liam's team will continually monitor his progress, reviewing and revising his IEP as needed to help him stay on track to meet his goals. That's step 5 of college and career-ready IEP development. And then the process begins again. Developing college and career-ready IEPs from when a student is first identified for special education, whether in preschool or high school, all the way through graduation, is how to close achievement gaps and provide additional opportunities for student learning. It's how to help students with disabilities graduate ready for college, career, and life in the community. For help with the 5-step process, there are sample IEP forms schools can use and more resources, such as 5 research-based beliefs that underlie the 5-step process, available on the College and Career Ready IEPs page at the Department of Public Instruction website.
DPI assesses MPS's compliance with special education policies and procedures on an annual basis using a process called RDA PCSA, which Sherry mentioned, reading-driven accountability, procedural compliance self-assessment. The process involves both DPI and MPS personnel reviewing IEPs for compliance with multiple items related to initial evaluations, reevaluations, IEP amends and annual IEPs, discipline, and IEP implementation. In fact, that process is going on right now in MPS.
There are 5 key beliefs that are essential to developing IEPs that promote college and career readiness. The 5 beliefs are discussed and incorporated throughout the IEP planning process. These beliefs can have an important impact on the success of students with IEPs. And on this slide, there is a 5 beliefs handout that I'll open up. And just to point out things like the 5 beliefs include high expectations, in which IEP teams know how important high expectations are and that they influence academic achievement and post-secondary independence, and explore a shared vision for high expectations. Culturally responsive practices is another belief. IEP teams know and respect the unique identity of the student and look to explore programs and practices that meet the diversity of the student's abilities, race, gender, language, and culture. Student relationships is another belief. IEP teams know the value of relationships that are necessary for learning. Family and community engagement. IEP teams know how new ways of rethinking about family and community engagement really can improve student outcomes. So engaging families is a very strong and important belief. And then finally, collective responsibility. IEP team members know the power of working together and that it's everyone's responsibility to help each and every student in accessing grade level instruction, achieving academic standards, and functional expectations.
The CCR-IEP 5-step process. It's easy to remember the 5 steps using the verbs as reminders. Understand achievement, identify effects of disability, develop goals, align services, and analyze progress. It is intended to be a cyclical process IEP teams use to assist in planning future services and supports for your child. For understanding achievement, this means that the team understands grade level academic standards and functional expectations so that they can identify your child's strengths and needs. Identifying the effects of the disability means determining how academic achievement and functional performance are impacted by your child's disability. The team must develop goals that are ambitious and achievable, and that close achievement gaps and support the unique strengths and needs of your child. Services must be aligned so that they support the goals and ensure access for your child to the general environment, general education environment and curriculum. Those services include specially designed instruction, supplementary aids and supports, related services, and program modifications and supports. The IEP team and personnel supporting the IEP must analyze progress towards goals to evaluate what works for your child and what is needed to close the student's achievement gaps. In MPS, the 5-step process, the very process you see on this slide, is the process that is used by MPS or should be used by MPS personnel when they are developing your child's IEP.
All right, so we're going to talk about step 1, understanding achievement. The first bullet talks about the present level of achievement. For present level of achievement, we must have sufficient information to establish a baseline, which will be used to develop annual goals. We consider student strengths and interests, and those are described first. These include how the child is performing in the classroom, at school, and outside of school. From an academic standpoint, regarding academic skills in math, reading, and written language, communication skills, social skills, and interests. A summary of student performance in academic content areas such as reading, math, and written language are included, and we obtain that information from sources that may include state and district-wide or classroom assessments, rubrics, and screeners. The information shared should establish what is called a baseline for developing annual goals for the student. And for preschoolers, for little ones, ages 3 to 5, knowledge and skills such as early language development, communication, early literacy, and general knowledge would be included. The second bullet is in regard to present level functional performance. And we should see a summary on the student's functional performance in this area. Functional performance includes activities and non-academic skills needed for independence, access to instruction, and performance at school, in the home, in the community, for leisure time, and for post-secondary and lifelong learning. Examples include activities such as daily living and social skills. Present level of functional performance also includes the impact and access to instruction. So how does what is seen affect the access to and progress in instruction? What's the observed behavior? Also in the present level, we include concerns of the parent or family. And the concerns of the parent describes the concerns of the parents or family for enhancing the education of the student. So when at the IEP team meeting, parents will be asked if they have any concerns. This may include concerns about their students' reading achievement, early language and communication, or early literacy skills, other academic areas, social emotional needs, sensory needs, behavior, the child's future, post-secondary transition, and much more. There's also an area for concerns of the student. So if the student has any input in regard to concerns that they have for enhancing his or her education, there's now an area for students' concerns as well. So students will be able to share any concerns they have for enhancing their education. The child may say nothing. They could also be able to self-advocate and state items such as, I wish I could get help with writing notes in social studies. On this slide, we do have a couple of resources for you as parents to explore. The Parents' Guides to Student Success are from the National PTA and are guides in which parents can learn about what students would be learning in English, language arts, and math for each given grade level, from kindergarten through 8th grade, and then also in high school. For the little ones, under the age of 5 and under, we have the Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards as well. Both of these resources, again, are linked into this presentation.
CCR-IEP Step 2, identifying the effects of the disability. A disability-related need identifies why the student is not accessing, engaging, or progressing in general education. The purpose of this is to help the team identify why a student has a disability and why the student may not be performing at grade level expectations. It really pinpoints the specific student needs in order to help the team identify the focus of the annual goals. The process used is a process called root cause analysis. And to further illustrate that, we're going to share a video about that process.
Years ago, the stone exterior was deteriorating at the Jefferson Memorial. Or painting over the worn areas was too expensive. So park rangers turned to root cause analysis and started asking why.
Why was the stone deteriorating?
High-powered sprayers were being used to wash the memorial every 2 weeks.
Why were high-powered washings needed every 2 weeks?
Because of bird droppings.
Asking why stopped because it seemed the cause was found. Workers put nets around the building, but they were unsightly, and the birds found ways around them. So it was back to the drawing board, or the 5 whys.
Why are there so many birds?
They come to feed on spiders.
Why are there so many spiders?
They feed on insects at night.
Why are there so many insects?
They're attracted by lights that shine on the memorial at night.
With a new cause found, questions stopped, and a plan was created to reduce the amount of time the memorial spent in the spotlight at night, and it worked. The insects were reduced by 90%, and with the root cause removed, the excessive cleaning was no longer needed. An unexpected benefit was a cost savings realized by using less electricity. This highlights how root cause analysis can involve trial and error, and how the 5 whys isn't always limited to exactly 5 questions. Read more about root cause analysis and the Jefferson Memorial story at the link below.
Examples of disability-related needs include reading comprehension, reading fluency, reading decoding, math fluency, math calculation, written expression, post-secondary preparedness or transition, organization, articulation, sensory, and there are many others. In MPS, when developing your child's IEP, there should be discussion about your child's progress toward grade level, academic, and functional performance standards. This is because IEP teams have to make determinations about the type of curriculum in which your child will participate, the general curriculum or the alternate curriculum. The general curriculum is based on the Common Core state standards, and the alternate curriculum is based on the Common Core essential elements. In MPS, the framework for implementing the Common Core essential elements is unique. For K3, K4, K5 students, there is only one curriculum, and Sherry referenced this. There are only one set of standards, the Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards for both special ed students and regular ed students. And in MPS, many schools use Frog Street to implement those standards.
All right, now we're on to the CCR-IEP Step 3, Develop Goals. So one important thing to remember here is disability-related needs that were identified in Step 2 are linked to the annual measurable goals. Goals will, number 1, address a disability-related need, which includes a skill set the team determines the student must develop. The goal will provide a baseline, which defines how the student is currently performing. The goal will set an expectation for progress 1 year from now. That's also known as the level of attainment. The goal may have some short-term objectives or benchmarks. It's not required for all goals, except if the student is using the alternative achievement standards. Then annual goals must have short-term objectives or benchmarks. We also address in this section how the goal will be measured, what the student will do, where and when, and to what level and degree. The next step is progress reporting that's included in the goals section of this step. Progress reporting tells how and when the parents will be informed of progress, and normally this is done using the same schedule that is used for all students in the district.
Most IEP teams in MPS determine that a student's progress report should be provided or will be provided to a parent, guardian, you, with the same frequency as report cards, as Sherry just indicated. In MPS, most K5, K8 schools are on a trimester, and so a parent would expect to receive a progress report 3 times a year if that's what was agreed to by the team. For most true middle schools, our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, There would be quarters, so a parent guardian would expect to receive a progress report about 4 times a year. And in high schools, which work on semesters, it would be 2 times a year. Again, if that's what the IEP determined was appropriate. Your child's progress report should include information about the progress your child is making toward all the goals, benchmarks in your child's current IEP. This information should include data that the teacher or the provider, such as a speech pathologist, has gathered regarding your child. Also, if your child is not making sufficient progress toward his or her goals and or benchmarks, then the progress report must include information about how your child's IEP will be revised to address any lack of progress. And so if that is the case, then you would also expect to be hearing from that special education provider about an upcoming IEP meeting or scheduling a meeting. CCR-IEP Step 4, Aligning Services. Special education services include, and I mentioned this before, specially designed instruction, supplementary aids and services, related services, and program modifications and supports. These services are what the student needs to access general or special education. They are instructional in nature, and those are typically provided by, if the child is identified as anything other than speech only, by a special education teacher. The child may also have a related services provider, and that could be someone such as a speech pathologist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a school social worker. Supplementary aids and services are those supports that can be implemented both in regular education or special education settings by a special education provider or by a regular education provider. And they're meant to support your child and help them make progress toward their goals, benchmarks, regardless of that situation. And there are also program modifications and supports, but those are supports that would be between providers, where they communicate about your child and make decisions about where there are progress and where there might be additional needs. We do have a document that I believe we're going to share that highlights some examples of these services. In the first section, you will see the supplementary aids and services, and this is often where the team begins their discussion about services. Some examples are listed there. I'll read a few of them. Tests read aloud, a scribe or note taker, copies of notes, extended time. Some are more familiar to people than others, but these would all be examples of supplementary aids and services. Specially designed instruction could include instruction designed around reading, math, written language, social skills instruction. Related services, I mentioned some of these already, but you can see there are quite a few. Some I didn't mention already would be psychological services and counseling. All of our schools have that type of support in place. But again, if it's part of a student's IEP, it's a related service. There's also transportation and audiology, so you see those listed. And then last, program modifications and supports are listed there. Sure, we can see that. And that could be training provided to personnel, help with modifying materials, special equipment, and the use thereof. The IEP team also has to address a student's participation in the general education environment and in physical education. Will it be adaptive physical education, or will it be physical education that regular ed students participate in? Whether the student will participate full-time with non-disabled peers in a general ed environment with non-disabled peers in age-appropriate settings is critical to the discussion about a child being in the least restrictive environment. The IEP will summarize when and why the student will be removed from non-disabled peers. And this actually is an item that's closely monitored by DPI when they look at our documentation. We want to make sure as a district that we're ensuring students with disabilities are included to the fullest extent possible in the regular ed environment and in the general ed curriculum as determined by an IEP team. That's an IEP team decision. You may hear phrases like K-3 only classrooms and bridging units in the district, but be assured that when we talk about different models, it's to improve inclusive service delivery options throughout the district and to increase the number of students with disabilities who are successfully participating in the general ed environment and the general ed curriculum. And again, that is something that DPI closely monitors for all districts, but also for MPS. CCR-IEP Step 5, Analyzing Progress. Teachers, providers, school districts, we all are responsible for ensuring that we're collecting data for students. The district, all districts collect data throughout the IEP year. Progress is monitored regularly through formal and informal means for all students, for regular ed students and special ed students. And this is critical, particularly critical for special ed students to ensure that we're properly informed when we're in an IEP meeting. All districts are required to assess student achievement. And again, special ed students are part of that group. Informal assessments include class participation, observations by the teacher and other providers, can include formative assessments, such as how your child works in a group, entrance, exit cards for class periods, how your child answers questions in class, how they interact with peers. And those are things that can be done continually during the class period in a school setting. Formal assessments would include graded assignments, and it also includes state and district-wide assessments. All children with disabilities are expected to participate in all general and state district-wide assessments. The team, the IEP team, identifies accommodations the student will utilize for all assessments. If the student does not participate, if your child does not participate in the general ed curriculum, participation in an alternate assessment may be considered. Curriculum aligned with alternate achievement standards is typically reserved for students with most severe intellectual disabilities. So that should be a very small population within our district because the majority of our students should be in the general ed environment accessing the general ed curriculum. But this would mean that students in the alternate curriculum would take a different assessment, and that's called the DLM, the Dynamic Learning Maps in Wisconsin. State assessments are for students in grades 3 through 11. In grades 3 through 8, students take the state exam, the forward. In grades 9 and 10, students take the ACT Aspire. In grade 11, students take the ACT with writing. You will want to make sure that when your child enters high school, you carefully look at the assessment page within the IEP, and all IEPs must have that page. It's very important, particularly for the ACT, to address accommodations because those accommodations have to be applied for with the ACT company who administers or organizes the test. Districts also are allowed to make local decisions regarding assessments. District assessments may include any grade level. And in MPS, we have assessments like the PALS for younger students, and we use STAR for older students. I do want to add here, at your child's IEP meeting in MPS, assessment accommodations must be discussed, addressed, so please bring it up. Remember, however, that for some assessments, like state mandated assessments, The IEP team will be limited to certain accommodations, and usually those accommodations are identified on DPI's website for the different tests. Also, the IEP team should not be recommending an accommodation that your child has never used before for a test. If they have never used text-to-speech or a scribe, that is something that should be used prior to that exam so they have experience with it and can use it to the most effective way possible. Oh, I'm sorry.
Here we're going to talk about a step that is sort of outside the CCR-IEP process. It's called transition, and it's for students that are 14 and older. So we follow very much the same 5-step process. However, the focus on the post-secondary transition plan is what the student would like to do after high school. So students who are 14 and older will have a PTP, and at least one IEP goal should be linked to the transition plan of the student. And on the slide here, we do have an example of Ladisha. If anyone is interested in reviewing a post-secondary transition plan.
In MPS, for students who are going to be 14 years or older during the span of their current IEP, the IEP team is expected to begin the meeting by completing the post-secondary transition plan. So please advocate for that. We should be starting IEP meetings with what I like to say is the end in mind. What's going to happen after the student leaves MPS? The information in the student's PTP, post-secondary transition plan, should guide the determinations made regarding the student's IEP. A student's PTP must be reviewed at a minimum on an annual basis. The PTP, and you'll see it if you take a look at the example eventually, includes post-secondary goals. So we have to have goals related to education or training, a goal related to employment, and a goal related to independent living skills. We also have to identify, and that has to be based on an appropriate transition assessment. In the district and in the state, we use a program called Zello to help students increase their knowledge about transition opportunities. There also needs to be the annual goal, which is what Sherry was referencing. Those two, the PTP and IEP, even though they're two separate documents, they should be done in tandem with one another. They are critical to a student's success. They have to be done together. Transition services that the student might need have to be addressed. In MPS, we have a school to work transition program that includes work opportunities when students enter high school, like a community assessment training program, on-the-job training, but there are also transition coordinators in our buildings at the high school level and middle school level, so there are opportunities to learn work-related skills in the school setting as well. There should be a course of study, which is the listing of classes your child is taking, and that should be updated yearly so your child is on track to graduate. And on track doesn't necessarily mean 4 years. For special education students, that might be a longer time. If that's what they need to meet their IEP goals and to reach either the diploma or earn the certificate of completion, then that's part of that planning process in the IEP meeting. And it also includes information about the transfer of rights. When a student turns 18, unless some type of guardianship is in place, they become their own guardian.
Our final slide here is all about getting ready. If this is your first IEP meeting, talk with others who understand the IEP process. Review the IEP checklist that's linked in here. The IEP checklist was developed by Wisconsin Facets and is located on their website at this link in both English and Spanish. The third bullet talks about filling out a student snapshot or my snapshot. These are input forms. So Milwaukee Public Schools may use a different type of form to seek input from parents before an IEP meeting. Fill that out, provide information to the IEP team ahead of time so they know where you as a family are coming from, what your thoughts, what your hopes, what your dreams, what your concerns are. You are important. You are a member of the IEP team. The fourth bullet, talk with your child. Our children can give us great insights as to what is going on and how they feel. Review the present IEP and ask for a copy of it if you can't find it. The next one, write down a list of questions that you want to ask at the IEP meeting. And finally, have positive conversations with your child's teachers before the IEP meeting. Our final slide here contains a number of organizations who provide information and resources and training and support to families. Those include WISB, Wisconsin Facets, Wisconsin Family Ties, and then the mediation system is available when families and schools struggle with either communication or with decisions that are being made. The other items are from DPI, and I invite you to check out these resources when you have a moment. All right. I would like to now open it up to questions. So I'm looking at our chat here. One person asked, if my child has been in special education since starting school and has the alternative curriculum, is it possible to move a special needs elementary student to a regular classroom once they graduate from 5th grade?
Is it possible? It is possible, but it would be an IEP team decision. The IEP team has to look at a variety of information. We do have guidelines for the team because we want to make sure that we are making the appropriate decision. So we may look at your child's current performance. So we talked about some of those informal and formal assessments that are administered at MPS. If your child's currently in unique, then there would be data showing how your child has been doing in unique. And that would be data we'd expect to see at the IEP meeting. We'd also have data in addition to just those pieces of information that teachers gather on a regular basis from the more formal sources. Your child would have participated in STAR, would have participated, which is the district assessment, would have participated in some state assessments if they're going into 6th grade. So we would use all that information, including information from the evaluations, the initial evaluation, and the reevaluation that has been done. In some cases, it may require more than an annual IEP or an IEP amend. To gather the information that might be needed, we may do a reevaluation so we have a comprehensive picture of your child.
Very good. Thank you, Amy. I have another question from another parent. How would my child be reviewed in school?
Are you asking about reviewed for special education or?
It's not specified. So
Okay.
I'll wait to see if Patricia would like to add anything additionally. Otherwise, I can go on to the next question and we can circle back.
Say, I mean, if your child's a regular education student right now, then that would be an initial evaluation, and you can always request that from the school psychologist in your building. They're in a position called a building coordinator. Before you do that, you may want to look at some other options. Is your child in what we would call a tier 2 or tier 3 intervention? We always want to try those things first that allow our children to remain in the regular ed environment and curriculum. If your child's already in special education, then the review might be an IEP meeting, and you can ask for that at any time. You would ask your provider. So it's either a special education teacher or a speech pathologist. If your child's only in speech right now, and I don't mean only, but is identified as speech only, then your provider, your child's provider would be a speech pathologist. If your child has other needs beyond speech, then your child's provider or case manager is another word we use, would be the special education teacher.
Okay, very good. And Patricia said, yes, that is what she was talking about. So very good. I also have another question here. Does my child need to be at grade level somewhere to be included in the general curriculum? And a second question, how do we ensure that he has the opportunity to engage with non-disabled peers when the gap of grade level knowledge is widening?
That's a great question. And it is difficult in some ways to speak to these really specifically, but I would say that there is no criteria that a child has to be at or near grade level in a specific area. And I'm assuming you mean like math or reading or writing in order to be included for the most part in regular ed. Like I said, the vast majority of our students in MPS, and I can't speak to individual students here, should be in the general education environment, in the general education curriculum. And we're really trying to, I don't want to say push hard on that, but because we shouldn't have to, right? That is the place our children belong. If a team just determines differently, then yes, we respect that decision and have to program accordingly. But that certainly is something we're talking about, because saying that a student should be in a certain classroom where they aren't in front of that appropriately licensed regular ed teacher can have some impact on their future growth in that area. And so we really want to increase that exposure and provide specially designed instruction to address the gaps in, if it's a reading, like a phonics issue, phonemic awareness issue, fluency issue, we want to address, or math calculation, we want to address that so the child can be in reg ed.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I see we have 2 minutes left. So we do have a couple more questions in the chat. So just to make sure everyone knows, and to remind everyone that we will be posting questions and answers to these questions in the on the website following these presentations this week. So I'd like to just go with the closing right now. So I'd like to just express a big thank you to Amy for joining me tonight in talking about IEPs, and for sharing that very helpful information. It's wonderful to have district staff speaking about IEPs and answering questions that are really on families' minds. I also want to thank all of our families for your questions and for participating tonight. Our goal for the week was to share information that is meaningful to our families. In our planning process, we used the feedback from the families that completed surveys at last year's event. That feedback helped us to pick topics for this week. It is very important to us to make this experience a good one for you. We can only do that with your feedback. Each night after each presentation, you will be asked to complete a survey that will tell us what you thought about the presentation. On Friday night, you will be asked to complete a survey to tell us what you thought about the week overall. By completing that survey and including your contact information, you will be given the chance to get a free Celebrating Abilities t-shirt. You will find the link to the survey in the chat. Again, you must include your contact information, such as your email address or phone number, so we can contact you with instructions on how to claim your t-shirt. As always, we encourage you to make sure that you are in communication with your child's teacher, school support staff, and administrators if you have any questions or concerns. We are all here to support you. Once again, please complete the survey using the link provided in the chat. Before we close, thank you to our event sponsors and the planning committee, and thank you for joining us. We hope to see you back here with us every night this week at 5:30. You should use the same link that you used to access the presentation tonight to access presentations every night this week. Be safe and be well. Thank you.